Hey, how's it going, Nostalgia? This is Ryan from the Nostalgia Factor here with another video as part of Yu-Gi-Thon, a series where we're going to be reviewing 3 different Yu-Gi-Oh! Game Boy Advance games. Now, the other day we covered Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 Trials to Glory. If you guys haven't checked that out, I'll leave a link in the description down below. But today we're going to be recovering the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Game that was actually based off of something from the anime, Yu-Gi-Oh! And the Sacred Cards. Yugioh Sacred Cards was released in North America in 2003, and was actually loosely based off of Battle City, one of the biggest and most notable parts of the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, even to this day, 20 years or so after its inception. So, with that in mind, guys, since this is actually a Yu-Gi-Oh! Game, not a World Championship game, not its own story, but based off of the anime, how well does this game hold up from such a legendary part of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series? About the story of the series, since Sacred Cards is based off of the Battle Cities plotline, where you battle against Merrick and his rare hunters in an attempt to keep the evil clutches of him, basically, away from the Egyptian god cards, and of course unlocking more parts of the Pharaoh's past, you think that this game would be like an in-depth analysis and a breakdown of every single event and every single duel that happened in Battle City. Well, the story in this game takes a bit of a different approach, as you are actually a friend of Yugi and Joey's in this game, and this whole plot is a loose summary of Battle City. It's nothing too in-depth. There are moments like where you battle strings on the bridge, like what Yugi did in the anime, and where you battle certain duelists that were part of the series here and there at different points and locations, like Wheeler, that you, well, not Wheeler, but Weevil, that you face off against in the park, for example. You go around and you fight against 6 of the main duelists that aren't the main cast, like Mai and Rex and all those other guys in different parts of Battle City, or Domino City if you want to call it that, to find the locator cards, and then go to the giant battle tower where Kaiba ends up facing off against Yugi, and Yugi faces off against Merrick, and all that other stuff that happened in the anime. All that stuff does happen, but it's loosely stringed together. You know, since you're the main hero in this adventure, a lot of the events that happened didn't really take place. For example, the difference between the game and the anime. In the game, instead of it being Yugi and Kaiba facing off, Kaiba and Merrick actually face off, and Merrick beats Kaiba, and he goes into a coma. So there are some differences here and there, and you actually have to face off against Yugi before you face off against Merrick, and you beat Yugi. So, moral of the story is there's a lot of differences between this and Battle City. And quite frankly, while it's not the strongest interpretation of it I think it could have been, I think that it works for what it is. There's some good differences in there that spice it up a bit, and it does have the charm of the original anime in there with some of the dialogue and whatnot, but all in all, the story isn't really anything too credible, but it works. Now, the main talking point with most of these older Yu-Gi-Oh! Games isn't really so much the story or the plot, aside from a few games, one of which we'll get to later on, but in this game, it's definitely the gameplay. Now, the gameplay compared to 7 Trials to Glory, I think is much better, looks better, a lot more crisp, and it makes a lot more sense with the fluid card animations, with the way that it shows the life point counter being taken down whenever a monster attacks, with it being quick and fast-paced whenever the duel's going on, with the monsters being destroyed, you lay down a card, you activating it. It doesn't take a million years like it does in prior games. So, this game game definitely is way more fluid to control with the dueling, and it definitely is a lot more satisfying. And of course, it looks better. Now, this game isn't graphically superior in any means to a lot of GBA games. Most of the environments that you go through in Domino City throughout the tournament are pre-rendered backgrounds, and the main sprites that are highlighted are either NPC characters, or of course the main characters that you play off against, or main story events like a monster animation from a certain player. That's the kind of stuff that's really animated. But, you know, it's serviceable, it does the job. Graphics aren't anything amazing, but they do look good, and the dueling itself, which again is the core mechanic you're going to be doing, works really well. I really like the fluidity of it, and I really do like the animation. For the time when it came out, it was so simple yet effective, and that's what I really like about this game as well, you know, besides the loosely based story off of Battle City. There is an element of this gameplay that I don't care for too much, and it's not because it's frustratingly difficult, or it's terrible to control, or the cards are terrible to use. It's nothing like that. It's how easy the game is. Sacred Cards is not going to be a challenging game for you to play for. Even if you're new to the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And you've never played a game, you've never picked up a card in your life, you are going to be able to play this game relatively easily. The monsters that you would normally take forever to get in other games like Rechef, you get instantly at the start of the game. You get a ton of money you can buy from the shop in order to get the best high-level cards possible. You get so much, in fact, that you could have the entire trunk filled before you even face off against Merrick if you wanted to grind enough. And that's no joke. It's incredibly easy to break this game, and that's not an exaggeration. Like I said, you could get all the cards in the game right before then and trounce everybody up until Merrick. It's incredible how easy it can be to break the game. So the difficulty curve I wish would have been addressed more. I'm not someone who wants like an easy challenge in a game. I also don't want one that's incredibly difficult and not be able to finish, especially if it's a game I enjoy, which I do enjoy Sacred Cards. But I also would like a bit more challenge with some of the duelists, and you just don't really get that in this game. Now, the difficulty spike at the end, though, when you make it to the final duel against Merrick, that is when it just completely goes 180. All the duels that you've fought up to this point, for the most part, have been relatively easy, even against main player characters. Even in the Battle City Finals itself, or most of the duels are pretty simple. But Merrick, the way his monsters, his deck, his strategies, his spell and trap cards, all of the stuff that he uses in the anime for the most part are in his deck, and he is pretty overpowered. You can get trounced by him quite a few times before you even get close to beating him. So that's one thing I wish would have been better, is the difficulty curve. Since most of the game is completely easy to go through anyway, it's really odd that they decided to make the final boss just OP all of a sudden, which is interesting, but nonetheless, it's still the game design. So I think overall it could have been better. I would have liked a bit more challenge, and if you're going to make the final boss the hardest part of the game, make that consistent throughout the entirety of the experience. There are two other things I want to mention part of this review, because when it comes to a Yu-Gi-Oh game, aside from the story, the gameplay is really the meat and bones of the entire thing, and quite frankly, there's not really much else to discuss outside of that. But two other parts I want to talk about. One, the strategy in this game is definitely implemented better than Seven Trials to Glory. We actually have elements this time. You can have a Blue Eyes White Dragon with 3,000 attack points, and it's a light element. But you can have, let's say, Shadow Curtain, whatever that monster's name is. It's a dark type. It's 600 attack points. You think that Blue Eyes would wipe it out instantly. Not in Sacred Cards and not in Rechef. Games like that go off of elements as well. The Shadow would beat the Light, which means that 600 attack point monster would beat that 3,000 attack Blue Eyes. So there is an element of strategy. You just don't need the strongest cards in the game. You also need monsters that are pitted against different elements. Like, for example, fire beats forest, lightning beats water, you know, that kind of thing. It's simple stuff in a way. Of course, like, dream beats shadow and light beats fiend and all that other stuff. It's going to be technically, it's not really an element, so it's not really going to make much sense whenever you first start playing it, but it adds a really good element of strategy instead of just loading your deck with the strongest monsters. When it comes to certain opponents, you have to have certain alignments in there, or elements of different monsters, in order to properly take them down. Because you can have the weakest monster in the game, but if it's the right element, you can destroy that other monster. So, I really like that part of the game as well. Some really good strategy. The one thing I don't like, though, is at the very end with the Egyptian god cards. I mentioned this a while back as well, actually, because I covered this in like a very, very old review on another channel. But I will say this, the ending isn't that amazing either. The game just immediately ends. If you try and reboot your game after you beat Merrick and the story concludes, you're just put back right before the Merrick fight. There's no post-game content whatsoever. And I'm not expecting much from like a simple retelling of Battle City kind of Yu-Gi-Oh game. I'm not expecting that. But the sad part is you barely get to use Obelisk. Slifer you get near the start of the game, kind of. And the Wind Dragon of Ra, the only way that you can play that game is by hacking it, using a Game Shark, some kind of cheat. That's the only way possible that you're going to be able to use the Wind Dragon of Ra. And it's so disappointing because you get that at the end and you have to give the God cards back. And because there's no post-game content to use it for, and you don't even have the opportunity to really use it in the first place, there's no point in really even getting it, because you're just going to have to give it back to Ishizu when the duel's done anyway. I wish that would have been better, too. While I love the added strategy with the monster elements, I really wish that there would have been some more post-game content, and really, I would have just liked the fact that you wouldn't have gotten the Wind Dragon of Ra at the end at all, because that's just kind of a tease. You could have used this card, but you can't. And that is going to do it for my review of Yu-Gi-Oh! And the Sacred Cards, guys. Overall, this game, it's a pretty simple Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. I think it's an alright experience. It's definitely not the strongest, again, Yu-Gi-Oh! Game Boy Advance game out there, or Yu-Gi-Oh! Game in general. The story is pretty simple for what it is. The gameplay is really innovative for the time, with adding more strategy, with the monster elements. Ending's pretty disappointing in the fact that they tease you with some of the best cards in the game that you can't even legitimately use. And, of course, the graphic fidelity being alright, you know, in itself, nothing amazing. I think all the things I've said, all considered, I think that this game is an alright experience. It's a pretty good, solid, quick experience if you want to play it. It's not going to be any real challenge to you if you decide to pick it up. So, if you want to experience a simple retelling of Battle City with some added strategy to it, feel free to check out Yu-Gi-Oh! And the Sacred Cards. It's alright. Like I said, that's going to do it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. I'm looking forward to the next one because the next Yu-Gi-Oh! Game Boy Advance game that we're going to be covering is Rechef for Destruction, the most unique Yu-Gi-Oh! Game Boy game I've ever played, with an entirely brand new story, brand new mechanics, and a new added layer of difficulty because the developers listened a little too well from Sacred Cards, but we'll get into all that next time. Either way, let me know what you guys thought about this video in the comment section down below. And drop the video a like if you would like to support the channel, and also subscribe if you guys want to catch more videos in the future. So with all that in mind, guys, this has been Ryan from the Nostalgia Factor saying, keep on gaming.